is at a pivotal moment in his presidency, trying to pass legislation that could bring about the biggest change to America's social safety net in decades. Democratic leaders have less than 2 weeks to meet the new deadline that they themselves have set to agree on this sweeping plan. For weeks, they've been struggling to reach a deal. The stakes are certainly high for the president, for his party, and for the nation. Tonight, President Biden will take questions about his agenda directly from voters here in Baltimore. Everyone in this audience is vaccinated and masked per local regulations, except when questioning the president. I've been vaccinated as well, tested multiple times for COVID in the past week, including today. So with that, I want to welcome the 46th President of the United States, President Joe Biden. Questioning the president and for the nation. Tonight, President Biden will take questions about his agenda directly from voters here in Baltimore. Everyone in this audience is vaccinated and masked per local regulations, except when questioning the president. I've been vaccinated as well, tested multiple times for COVID in the past week, including today. So with that, I want to welcome the 46th President of the United States, President Joe Biden. So there's a lot to get to tonight, and we got a lot of great questions from our audience. We want to get into the details of what you're calling the Build Back Better plan. Before we get into that, though, I just want to know, there's been a lot of negotiating going on behind the scenes, as I'm sure you are very involved with. Are you close to a done deal?
No problem. It's all done. No, look, Anderson, we've been, I've probably spent, well over 100 hours. This is a big deal. We have two plans. One is the infrastructure plans, roads, highway, bridges, buses, trains, et cetera. And the other one is what I call the care economy. Has a lot of money in there for environmental remediation, as well as care economy. For example, we want to get the economy moving, but millions of women can't go to work because they don't have any child care, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of pieces in there. There's a lot that people don't understand. And by the way, all of it's paid for. Every single penny. It's not going to raise 1 single cent.
We're going to get into a lot of those details. Just though, are you close to a deal?
I think so. Look, I was a senator for 370 years, and I was relatively good at putting together deals.
Is this the toughest deal you've worked on?
No. I think banning assault weapons is the toughest deal I worked on, and succeeded.
You're flying to Europe, I think, in 8 days.
Yes.
Do you think you'll have a deal by the time you get on Air Force One in 8 days?
It's like my asking you, are you sure your next show is going to be a success?
Yes.
Well, you're more confident than I am. Look, it's all about compromise. Compromise has become a dirty word, but it's bipartisanship and compromise still has to be possible. When I ran for the president, I said I'm running for 3 reasons. 1, to restore the soul and decency in the country. 2, to build the middle class and the working class so we built from the middle out. And 3, to actually unite the country. And everybody's been saying, well, that's crazy. You can't do it. If we can't eventually unite this country, we're in deep trouble.
Bottom line, do you think you will get a deal?
I do think I'll get a deal.
All right, let's go to the audience. This is Nicholas Vaught. He's the coordinator of the Applied Liberal Studies program at Morgan State University. He's a Democrat. Nicholas?
Morgan State.
All
right, man. Good. I was poking there. Yeah.
So my wife and I have 2 young boys, Arthur and Teddy. However, the cost of childcare is nearly double our mortgage. We want to have more children. But even though we earn a good salary now, childcare is so expensive. So how will this new infrastructure plan help middle-class families pay for childcare?
Well, let me ask you, how old are your kids?
3.5 and 6 months old.
God love you. Well, look, there's 2 pieces. There's the child care, having someone take care of your child while you are working, while you and your wife are working.
3.5 and 6.
You'll get a deal?
I do think I'll get a deal.
All right, let's go to the audience. This is Nicholas Vaught. He's the coordinator of the Applied Liberal Studies program at Morgan State University. He's a Democrat. Nicholas?
Morgan State.
Morgan State.
All right, man. Good. I was poking there.
So my wife and I have two young boys, Arthur and Teddy. However, the cost of childcare is nearly double our mortgage. We want to have more children, but even though we earn a good salary now, childcare is so expensive. So how will this new infrastructure plan help middle-class families pay for childcare?
Well, let me ask you, how old are your kids?
3.5 and 6 months old.
God love you. Well, look, there's two pieces. There's the child care, having someone take care of your child while you are working, while you and your wife are working. Under this proposal I have, no one will have to pay unless you're making more than individually. You're each making, making over $300,000, $150,000 a piece.
For educators.
Oh, by the way, I'm married to one, Dr. Biden, right here. So you will not have to pay more than 7% of your income for child care, 7%. And the way we do that is we provide for the ability to have child care centers funded. The money won't even go to you. You'll figure income, you get 7% with the total cost. But there's another piece here. You now are qualified to be able to have a child tax credit. It used to be that if you had enough money to pay significant taxes, you could write off $2,000 for every child you had and reduce them your taxes. But if you were making $60,000 a year, you didn't have that much to write off. You didn't get anything. Well, I call this a tax break for middle-class people. If you're making in the $150,000 range, right now you're in a situation where you can get, if you have a child under 7, $350. If you have a child over 7, between 7 and 17, you can get $300, and you get a direct payment. The IRS sends you money.
Joe Manchin wants a work requirement with your enhanced tax credit for kids. Is that something you would support?
No. Here's the deal. All these people are working anyway. And by the way, why should somebody who is not working and has has a $1 million trust fund, why should they get the benefit, and someone making 60 grand and not working but staying home, why should they not get anything? I don't get that.
You're also proposing, for the first time ever, federal paid parental leave. And
yes, that's a different issue. Yeah,
right, a different issue. Right. Yeah. This is in your proposal. How much time off would parents actually get under your proposal? Because at one point you talked about 12 weeks. Now there's reports it's down to maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah, it is down to 4 weeks. And the reason it's down to 4 weeks, they can't get 12 weeks. And but look, here's the deal, guys. How many people do you know? Not a joke, or maybe yourself, have had a circumstance where you are working like a devil. You're making $7 an hour, $15 an hour, $20 an hour, and you have a child that's sick at home, or you have a mother or father, husband or wife, son or daughter, and you need to stay home to help them. We're one of the few industrial countries in the world that does not have paid leave, so that when you stay home to help that person, to take care of that person, you're still getting your pay, and it does not hurt the business at all. The business isn't paying for it. The federal government is paying for it. It's a little bit like, as I said, a tax cut for people who are not able to otherwise take care of their families. And look, I'm looking out here, and a lot of you are part of that sandwich generation. You have young kids, and you have aging parents. And one of the things all the polling data shows, Anderson, is people are more concerned about taking care of the elderly because they don't know what to do than they are even their children.
I want to talk about this. I want you to meet Vanessa Antrim from Bowie, Maryland. She's retired. She's a caregiver for her elderly parents.
God love you.
She's a Democrat. Vanessa, your question.
Yes, Mr. President. My parents have been married for 73 years, and both are dealing... Both of them are dealing with dementia. My father, who is a veteran, is completely bedridden, and my mom is experiencing issues with walking. I have found the process for me to provide care for them in my home very hard. They have worked all their life only for me to experience a lot of red tape to provide supports
Bingo.
in a loving home environment. What is being done to support the elderly, especially for a middle-class family like mine?
Well, first of all, if my mom were here, I'd say you're a good daughter, number one.
Thank you.
Number two, I was in a situation like you, where I was making more money. I was making $42,000 a year as a senator at the time, although I was listed the poorest man in the Senate for 36 years, but I still made more money than most people because Senate salaries kept going up. What happened was my dad got sick and he was in hospice, so Jill and I took my dad home. We took care of him in our house. But we were lucky because we had the ability to have, I have a sister who's an angel and a brother who's a wonderful guy, and we all took turns in our house taking care of them. But here's the deal. Right now, under Medicaid, there are 860,000, I think it's 860, don't hold me the exact number, it's over 800,000, who qualify for home health care aid for their parents. But there's no money there. There's no money there. So what we do is we provide the funding for Medicaid to allow you to be able to keep, if your parents had their home, keeping them in their home if you want it, or get help in your home with home care from professionals helping you take care of them. Helping you take care of them. And in many cases where you're not taking care of them in your own home, but they're staying in their home, you're going to be able to have the ability to have someone come in and make their meals for them. They don't have to be there 24/7. So there's a lot of things we're doing. In addition to the process, we're going to be able to train up those home care workers who are usually minority women, women of color, as well as immigrants. And they have the capacity to learn more as they go along to move to the point where they can become practical nurses and things like that. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's cheaper than it is to not do it.
One of the other things that Democrats are looking to do is to expand Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing as well. Given all the negotiations that are going on, will all three of those still be covered?
That's a reach. And the reason why it's a reach, I think it's a good idea. And it's not that costly in relative terms, especially if we allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. But here's the thing. Mr. Manchin is opposed to that, as is, I think, Senator Sinema is as well.
Opposed to all of them?
Opposed to all three, because they don't want, he says he doesn't want to further burden Medicare so that because it will run out of its ability to maintain itself in X number of years. There's ways to fix that, but not interested in that part either. But look, Joe's not a bad guy. I mean, he's a friend. And he's always, at the end of the day, come around and voted for it. But here's the point. We're in a situation now where if you are in a circumstance that you're not able to provide, well, let me cut to the chase. I'm taking too long. One of the things we're able to do in the meantime is the most expensive of these things would be dental. Okay? Now, we're talking about, don't have a deal on it yet, maybe getting an $800 voucher from Medicare for dental work that you may need. And the hearing is a very important thing because, as Kristen Sinema, who supports this, points out, hearing is directly related to dementia. When you can't hear, you have a problem, and it impacts on dementia. So we're able to, and it's cheaper to be able to take care of the hearing. But I think I've been able to take care of that without changing Medicare, because what's happening is now you have these hearing aid companies. You no longer are going to have to go to the doctor and spend $5 grand and get it. You can go and buy at Walgreens and buy over-the-counter hearing aid. So. The harder one, though, is we haven't gotten a consensus yet on how to deal with seeing glasses. But so it's not done yet, is the answer.
All right. I want to get into the question, and this is Ben Frederick. Ben is a realtor, lifelong resident of Baltimore. He's an independent, serves on the Maryland Multi-Housing Association.
By the way, Ben, the Bidens all hail from Baltimore beginning in 1850. So I don't know how the hell they kicked me out, but I'm...
Ben, what's your question?
IRS data shows that the top 5% of income earners pay 60% of the income taxes in this country. I hear you repeatedly say that the wealthy are not paying their fair share of income taxes. What is the percentage of income that you believe is fair?
Well, I think what's fair is that the present tax code, the highest tax rate is 35%, number one, okay? Number two, you're in a circumstance where corporate America is not paying their fair share. And I come from the corporate state of the world, Delaware. More corporations in Delaware than every other state in the union combined, okay? Now, here's the deal, though. You have 55 corporations, for example, in the United States of America, making over $40 billion, don't pay a cent. Not a single little red cent. Now, I don't care. I'm a capitalist. I hope you can be a millionaire or a billionaire. Not a problem. But at least pay your fair share. Chip in a little bit.
Well, let me follow up, because Kyrsten Sinema, who you mentioned, Senator Sinema, is opposed to any tax rate hikes for corporations and for high earners. Speaker Pelosi suggested today she could accept that. The question is, A, would you accept that? No rate hikes, tax rate hikes for corporations or high earners? And if so, how would you pay for this plan otherwise?
Because you don't have to, look, here's the deal. The tax rate, the corporate tax rate was 37%. Barack and I thought it should come down. We thought it should come down to 28%. In the process, it came down to 21% under Trump, which even the corporate leaders, and you know if you're in real estate, major real estate, ask them. They know they should be paying a little more than 21%. Because the idea that if you're a school teacher and a firefighter, you're paying at a higher tax rate than they are as a percentage of your taxes. But here's the deal. I believe that we can we can pay for this whole thing. I have it written in a card here, but I won't bore you with the detail. But for example, if you in fact made sure that you paid a minimum 15%, minimum 15% if you're paying nothing, minimum 15, that's over almost $400 billion over 10 years.
So you would be willing to go along with what Senator Sinema, and it seems like Speaker Pelosi is willing to consider, no tax hike for corporations or for high-earning individuals?
Here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to make sure that we pay for everything without anyone making less than $400,000 paying a single cent more in taxes. That's my objective. And so there's ways to do that. For example, you covered it on your show, the minimum international tax of 15%.
But no actual rate hikes?
No, I don't think we're going to be able to get the vote. Look, when you're in the United States Senate, and you're a president of the United States and you have 50 Democrats, every one is a president. Every single one. So you got to work things out. But where I am is I'm hearing now, I'll turn on the news and I'll hear that Biden's caved on such. Look, Biden's a simple proposition. Biden's going to get all the elements of these two bills have profound impact on economic growth, reduce, not increase inflation, don't add a penny to the debt, as well as grow the economy. I have 17 Nobel laureates in economics sent me a letter recently saying that my proposals would actually reduce inflation, diminish pressure. But here's the point. The point of it all is that I'm prepared. I can't think of anything that was consequential and changing the circumstance for the middle class and working class in America that came as a consequence of a single piece of legislation. I got a portrait of Roosevelt in my office, okay? Social Security is not anything like it is today when he passed it. It evolved, it moved, it grew. So I'm prepared to do the things that can get done now that can begin to change the lives of ordinary Americans, to give them a fighting chance and come back and try to get others later.
Let's talk about another one of those things. This is Sandra Gutman, an English professor at Loyola University, also a Democrat. Sandra, what's your question?
And by the way, you got another English professor who teaches writing here.
Thank you for taking my question, Mr. President. We've heard in the news that the proposal for 2 years of free community college may be cut from your economic package. An educated citizenry is absolutely crucial to solving complex problems like climate change and the systematic inequities in this country. We hope that this is not cut from the package, but if it is, what can you do to ensure that all Americans can get the education that they need to face these issues?
First of all, Professor, you made a very profound point. I'm not being sarcastic. And that is, and Jill uses a slightly different phrase, any country that out-educates us will out-compete us. Any country that out-educates will out-compete us. You have the vast majority of the 37 major countries in the world, economies. We rank 35 in our investment in education. We're in a situation where, if you think about it, what caused us to move ahead and dominate the 20th century in the late 1900s, and the early 1900s, late 1890s, we came up with, said, 12 years of free education. That was revolutionary at the time. I mean, seriously. Now, if we were sitting down today and saying, no, we got to put together an education system, raise your hand if anybody thinks 12 years is enough to compete in the 21st century. So that's why what I propose is free school for every 3- and 4-year-old in America, no matter what their background. All the data shows that no matter what home they come from, they increase exponentially their prospects of succeeding all the way through 12 years of school. You know all the statistics. The statistics go that if you come from a home where there's no books in the home and a single mom or a single dad, they're not well educated, they don't talk a lot. The kid from a average middle class home versus that home will go to school having heard 1 million more words spoken than the child who didn't. A gigantic disadvantage.
Mr. President, the question was on on community colleges, which was a big campaign promise that you made. You talked about that a lot on the campaign trail.
Yeah, and I'm going to get it done. And if I don't, I'll be sleeping alone for a long time. But here's the deal. So far, Mr. Manchin and one other person has indicated they will not support free community college. So what I think we can get done is we can significantly increase the amount of money by $500 payment for Pell Grants. And Pell Grants are available, and they can provide for up to 30% of the cost of community college and or college help tuition. So it's not going to get us there. It's not going to get us the whole thing. But it is a start. I'm convinced, absolutely positively convinced, that we're going to be able to, and by the way, we have in the legislation money for community colleges that dealing with apprenticeships, dealing with teaching people particular skills that will not get you a 2-year degree, but will teach you the skill. So I think we can get all of that done this time out. But I promise you, I guarantee you, we're going to get free community college in the next several years, across the board.
What was that conversation when you realized you weren't going to be able to get it in this bill at this time, and you had dinner with Dr. Biden that night? What was that conversation like? How'd you break that news?
Well, the White House has a lot of bedrooms. And she went like this, down the hall.
All right.
No, look, it really makes a gigantic difference. And think of this. You have more countries in the world with providing professional education beyond 12 years. We rank like, I think it's, don't hold me to the number, I think it's 16 or 17 in the world. The United States of America, for God's sake. This is about putting us in the game.
This is John Meche. He's a doctoral candidate at Morgan State University and an independent. John, welcome.
Where are you?
Morgan State.
Morgan State.
I know all these Morgan man. I've spoken there a couple of times, and by the way, the guy who runs my operation is anyway. I keep talking about Delaware State, but they keep saying about Morgan State. You know
Morgan
what I mean?
State. President Biden, I had so much faith in your election win, but based on history, the bipartisan efforts of the Democratic Party are held hostage by rogue moderates and Republicans. Why not do like the Republicans and usher through the Democratic agenda?
Well, two reasons. If you notice, the Republicans haven't passed a single solitary thing. Zero. So ushering through their agenda right now is just stop Biden. Oh, I shouldn't make it so personal. Stop my administration. That's what the agenda is. It's much easier to stop something than to start something. And look, what we did is when I wrote, I'm going to back up just a second. I apologize. I personally, during the campaign, before I got elected, I wrote the infrastructure bill relating to what we do to highways and all that kind of thing, hard data. And I wrote what's now called the care economy piece, and it has a gigantic piece of environmental pieces in it too. And I went before the joint session of Congress, and I laid out exactly what I was for. And so I made it clear what I was for. Initially, what happened was I got no support for anything from our Republican friends. And then they said, maybe we can work out a bipartisan deal on infrastructure. And we did. We worked on it. It didn't give me everything I wanted. It didn't have as much money in there for the environment, although it has tens of billions of dollars in there, but didn't have what I wanted in it. But we made a bipartisan deal. Now, what's coming along is this reconciliation, they call fancy word for the other pieces that have the child care pieces, have the economy that relates to allowing people women to go back to work. It has about $450 billion for environmental remediation and so on. And that's the one that is the issue.
Well, let me ask you, just getting to his question, we've talked a lot about Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema. You seem relatively confident you can kind of get Senator Manchin on board. There's a lot of Democrats in the House and Senate who are confused about where Senator Sinema actually stands on things. And I know she's been negotiating directly with you and the White House. What is your read on her? And obviously, you need her to remain positive in your direction, so I don't know what you're going to say. But what is your read on her? Do you know where she stands?
First of all, she's smart as the devil, number one. Number two, she's very supportive of the environmental agenda in my legislation. Very supportive. She's supportive of almost all the things I mentioned relating to everything from family care to all those issues. Where she's not supportive is she says she will not raise a single penny in taxes on the corporate side and/or on wealthy people, period. And so that's where it sort of breaks down. There's a few other issues it breaks down on. But what we're trying to do is reach a point here where I'm able to present to the Senate, they're able to vote on, and the House, a serious piece of legislation that changes the dynamic for working class folks in America and middle class folks, and begins to have the very wealthy and corporate members just begin to pay their fair share. Not a lot. How we get there, we're down to 4 or 5 issues, which I'm not going to negotiate on national television, as you might guess.
We'd be interested in hearing them if you want.
No, I know. But all kidding aside, I think we can get there.
You talked about the environmental piece. You said Senator Sinema is on board with that. Certainly, Senator Manchin is not. It gets to our next question. This is from Kobe Kong. He's originally from Anaheim, California. He's a sophomore class president at Johns Hopkins University and Democrat. Kobe, it's your question.
Mr. President.
One of the largest issues that people have trouble comprehending the severity of is climate change. Many legislators and politicians today are lenient as they won't have to live with the future effects. Without the legislative support for the climate aspects of your budget proposal and the Earth rapidly approaching the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degrees limit, what other backup plans do you have to ensure a future for the next generations?
Well, let's... Mr. President, you got it right. The existential threat to humanity is climate change. And when President Trump pulled out of the Paris Accord, which when I was with the Obama administration, we helped negotiate, the agreement was that we could not, if we reached beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in temperature, we're gone. Not a joke. Not a joke. And so we decided that he pulled out. First thing I committed to do is rejoin that accord, number one. But number two, what you have to do is you look at there's multiple ways in which we can deal with climate. I'm going off to COP26 in Scotland and in, I don't know, I guess it's 2 weeks or a week. I'm losing track of time. And I'm presenting a commitment to the world that we will, in fact, get to net zero emissions on electric power by 2035 and net zero emissions across the board by 2050 or before. But we have to do so much between now and 2030 to demonstrate what we're going to do. So let me give you a couple examples.
Okay, let me just follow up, though, very quickly on that, because the key climate provision that was in the Build Back Better plan, as you call it, the Clean Electricity Performance Program, that's been dropped now from this spending bill.
No, it hasn't.
It has not.
No, look,
but Senator Manchin is opposed to that.
He's opposed to it. But here's the deal. That is only one of well over $1 trillion worth of expenditures for climate change. It's $150 billion. It's important. And what it says is that if, in fact, the utility doesn't pull back and continue to reduce the amount of carbon that they emit, that what will happen is they will end up paying a penalty. And so there's a penalty incurred. Joe Manchin's argument is, look, we still have coal in my state. You're going to eliminate it eventually. We know it's going away. We know it's going to be gone. But don't rush it so fast that my people don't have anything to do. I think that's not what we should be doing. But the fact of the matter is, we can take that $150 billion, add it to the $320 billion that's in the law now that he's prepared to support for tax incentives to have people act in a way that they're going to be able to do the things that need to be done. For example, if you got windows that are the wind's blowing through, you get an incentive to put new windows in your home. You help get it paid. We are going to significantly reduce the cost of solar panels on your roof. We're going to continually, and for example, there's new battery technologies that are being I went out in Silicon Valley. There's a battery that's about that wide and about that thick. If you have solar power, you put that in your basement, and the sun doesn't shine for 7 days, you still have all the power you need.
But the concession has been agreed to for Senator Manchin about coal in his state. Is that true?
Nothing's been formally agreed to. The concession has been, the negotiation is, I've been saying to Joe, look, I'll take, if we don't do it in terms of the electric grid piece, what we'll do is give me that $150 billion. I'm going to add it to be able to do other things that allow me to do things that don't directly affect the electric grid in the way that there's a penalty, but allow me to spend the money to set new technologies in place. For example, we can save significant amounts of money and, as a consequence of that, significant amounts of energy if, in fact, we are able to put the high-tension wires underground. It costs a hell of a lot more to do it. It creates real good jobs. It creates a hell of a lot more to do it. But, in fact, it would do a lot to keep things from happening that are dangerous. Half the forest fires out west are those towers coming down, setting fire, et cetera. So there's a lot of things. Joe is open to my convincing him that I can use it to increase environmental progress without it being that particular deal.
We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we got a lot more questions for President Biden. And welcome back. We are live at a CNN Town Hall event in Baltimore, Maryland, with President Joe Biden. So before we get to our next question, I want to just bring up the current labor market shortages. Millions of jobs are unfilled. Businesses are struggling to meet demand. Is there anything you can do to either encourage people to go back to work or make jobs more attractive, that they want to go back to work?
Yeah,
Is there
so
a role for the federal
first
government?
of all, we've created more jobs in the first 8 months of my administration